be true.
Right.
So sure, I mean, and again, I've eaten my share of crap. Southern California really is the ancestral home of chain restaurants
100%.
and fast food. But yeah, I still say I'm blown away and find it. Oh, well, let me ask you, since you're coming out hot with this. Well, you've always been into fitness, so it seems weird to you. Have you ever listened to one of these episodes? Because I know you've also listened to them all, and been really surprised at someone's dietary habits.
Only when it doesn't align with bad eating habits.
Okay.
Only when somebody comes in and talks about how they like the Jamba Juice episode.
Okay.
Where the actress that was on is a vegan. And so it was very strange to me that she'd even want to be on the podcast, let alone be interested in any of the restaurants that they go to. And it was a weird episode. I don't like that episode particularly much. But most of the time, like I hear people, because I grew up with and no fault to her, do not think this is any kind of shame, but my mom bought us McDonald's a lot when we were growing up because she was a single mom and she was working all day.
Right.
And she didn't have time to make meals at home. And so McDonald's was fine. And so I got accustomed to, in my childhood, eating at fast food restaurants a lot. And then in high school, it was always the place where you get your lunch pass, you drive down to the local whatever, eat that thing. And so, yeah, there was... I was working at Activision the same way that Nick Wiger
And I
did.
think that's become common now across the country that as soon as, let's say, juniors in high school can leave campus if they want to, they're hitting all the local fast food places.
Yeah,
obviously,
absolutely.
They're kids. That's where their palate's going to take them.
And some people, I think, keep that habit, especially because...
When you worked at Activision,
yeah,
what would you typically eat? What was breakfast? What was lunch?
So never...
Because I really want to bring this up, not only because... in my mind, I'm picturing like, again, which is probably unfair because it is just this, a stereotype.
Yeah.
But the stereotype of the like video game nerd.
Yes.
That these guys are using like sour straws as actual straws in their like 140 ounce Coke and like they're just eating absolute shit. And for our listeners who may not know this, Nick Wiger, one of the two hosts, who, like Brandon, is a weird, socially awkward robot of a human.
Thank you.
Also worked in game testing at Activision, same location as you did,
exactly,
right?
Yeah,
okay. So what was your breakfast? Because I know his was a nightmare when he discussed it. It was a long time ago. And yeah.
So I didn't eat breakfast, but there was routinely people who would start days with Mountain Dew.
Okay.
Because we had a soda fountain. And so it was, there was a soda fountain built in.
They want to keep
Activision.
you guys wired and
100%.
playing, right?
And they want to keep us on location.
Yeah.
And so, and there were, it's funny because there weren't a lot of fast food places around there, but there were like little countertop Mexican places and Italian places. And
Sure.
But there were definitely people who would drive out to go to fast food. Like they make the choice, I want to drive. And there are people who would eat the same fast food every day. And these were, 20, probably, I don't know if there were a lot of 30-year-olds, but definitely all the gamut of 20-year-olds and probably some young 30-year-olds who were choosing to eat fast food because it was comfortable and filling and tasted good. And a lot of these guys did not care very much about their physique or their outward appearance.
Right.
And I think that there is a gamer stereotype because there is an element of truthfulness that exists in the way that, especially for if you work at Activision, you're a part of that 10% of gamer culture where it's become a part of your life. And that's definitely true for me. I mean, I've played thousands of hours of video games.
So there is really kind of a connection, a recognizable connection to you, someone who's very much inside that world.
Yeah.
You're still a gamer to this day, kind of between junk food and video game playing.
100%. I have to fight all the time not to eat junk food.
Wow.
It's my go-to most of the time, and it's the thing wherever I feel stressed or I'm unhappy or something like that, it's like, oh yeah, junk food will be a solution.
Where does Subway fall for you? Because I happen to love Subway as far as a fast food choice. And I don't know if either of you have done the research, but maybe one of these times, just take a Google look and see how they rank with franchised fast food restaurants, because I believe at one point they were the largest in the world.
I just think that Jared's story is great. Have you guys
I
heard about Jared?
I don't want to talk about Jared at all, but I am curious.
Do you have a new Jared wrinkle that we don't know about?
Well, he lost a bunch of weight. That's great, right?
Oh, yeah. I did hear about that.
Getting us back to the topic of this podcast. So one was recorded live, one not. And I did feel that the audience was a nice add to the Taco Bell episode. Not because they necessarily did a lot of audience participation, but because at least through the laughter and some stuff, and I think they did have a few questions out to the audience or whatever, that it was a nice additional layer to the episode. Whereas I think, it could possibly be very easy for an audience to take away from an episode. I think in my notes, I put that I liked the live audience, and that, that there was an actual, I felt their presence, which was nice.
Sure. Well, Doughboys audiences, John, would you like to speak about Doughboys audiences on other live shows?
Well, it depends. This is true of every podcast. If you listen to the first live... Yes, Brandon?
I wanted to focus on Doughboys because sometimes they let them get out of control. And I wanted you to speak on the Doughboys specifically, if you remember the live audience.
No, I don't recall an episode where the audience was out of control.
In Canada and in Portland.
Yeah.
They both had audiences where they just constantly screaming at the Doughboys, where the Doughboys let them get out of control. Maybe you didn't feel that way.
No, I don't remember that. Maybe at the time that I listened to it. I mean, that can happen with every podcast for one reason. Like you said, you feel like they're your friends.
Sure.
Now, there are other podcasts that I know people feel that way about, and immediately somebody on stage would be like, hey, that's not how this works. We're the ones with the microphone. And I've heard it happen before.
Yeah,
where
Manzukis shuts that stuff down immediately.
He does, and he's pretty funny about it. And I think people now come out. It's like going to an insult comedy show where people are like, I'm going to sit in the front row and, wear a big hat so I get yelled at. Manzukis is quite good at doing it and will shut people down, and people tend to know not to do it.
From How Does It Get Made, just for the audience.
Right. But I think this can happen at every podcast because it is such a personal experience. You're listening to it while you're folding your laundry and maybe even falling asleep. You're on your commute, and they feel like they know these people.
Right.
So that can certainly happen. I was going to say with audiences, it generally ends up being early on, they're just at some podcast festival. And frequently, half the people who've walked in just saw it on the schedule for the day and went, oh, I'll check it out, and don't really know what's going on. Now, we talked about this with How Did This Get Made? Now it's these rabid audiences that are 100% there just to see him. When we saw Doughboys, which was just a few weeks ago, really, this was at a point where I think everyone was there just to see them.
Right. Yeah. It was
a one-off show.
It was a one-off show, and the other thing was that Doughboys did do tours of Texas and the Northwest. Sorry, and so they had people coming to their shows. And I think you're right. Is that there was a level of familiarity because Nick Wiger and Mike Mitchell tell so much about themselves.
Right.
Like I know so many of their stories because they have never been the kind of podcast hosts who have been guarded with their personal lives, like so many other podcast hosts, where it's not a conversation about these people and how they feel about these restaurants, because these restaurants are a personal experience. And so Nick Wiger and Mike Mitchell talk about their personal experience with their guests.
Right. And so, which is great, because I actually wanted to ask both of you about this, because obviously I'm not as familiar with them. But during the Taco Bell 2, at the end where you guys refer to it as the roast or whatever, where Nick plays the video. It is Nick that plays the video for Mike, right?
Yeah, that is not something that just happened on that episode. I don't think that's what Brandon was referring to when he said the roast at the beginning. But that is fucking hilarious, and clearly took a lot of time and effort.
And I thought it was hilarious without knowing any of these people, just because apparently their friends are just as funny.
By the way, at that point in the show, the listeners had no choice. I mean, by those episodes, by 2017, we right now, off the top of your head, name 4 of Mike Mitchell's friends' nicknames.
Changston, Flowbot,
Frailbot,
Wu-Tang,
yes,
Fuxton, which is the one that Nick made up, but isn't actually a real friend.
Right.
And then, hold on. I got one more. Chauncey, or maybe that's the wife of one of the friends that's a doctor.
That could be. But certainly, right off the bat, I'm with you. I'm like, Wu-Tang, Chankton, Frailbot. Neither of us should know this. It's because every fucking episode he brings up the crew, mooks from Boston, from Massachusetts, Quincy, that he grew up with. So you're right. By this point in the episode, if you were a fan, to hear all these guys with their egregious accents and his drunk friend who gets on stage and keeps saying their friend Wu-Tang's restaurant in Massachusetts makes the best shark fin soup. And he was so drunk. It was really fun because we've been hearing about these cartoon character friends of his forever.
He makes the best Mai Tais and the best shark fin soup you can get in the Boston area. It is fucking amazing.
I talked to Charlie before the show and I said, stop drinking.
Should have talked to Shankton's mom during pregnancy.
So,
I said I promised Mitch I'd roast you if you came up. So.
I'm sorry, Angelica.
Nah, so Wu-Tang, he makes the best shark fin soup.
Charlie, stop saying that.
Yeah, because
Right.
every one of his friends has a nickname.
I love that you loved it and you weren't part of that. You didn't know that.
And I did love it. And what I thought was funny is, and maybe because they're real people, or, at least to some extent, as opposed to Comedy Bang Bang, where that episode where they're throwing out all those imaginary characters, all these bits they've done, which, as you both know, and which, as our listeners know, I hated.
Yes.
Drove me crazy. This, like hearing these guys just ramble off, these one-liners and just commenting on this podcast, I thought was awesome. I don't know any of these people. I only assumed, just based on the 2 episodes that I listened to, how they talk about their childhood and how the food played a part and all that, that obviously through the series, these people are brought up numerous times. And it was, for me, really funny.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a great show. I give it 5 forks. Yeah, they have a rating system.
Yes.
Did you like the rating system? I mean, how did you like their description? Because the one weak point for me is that it's hard for me to take the show seriously as an actual food review podcast.
Are you supposed to?
And I think that there is an element to it. Do you not agree, John?
I mean, I think it is what it is. It's a comedy podcast about chain restaurants. It's not like we're saying, ooh, they were just at a Michelin 3-star restaurant.
Right.
That's not why we're going to them. I'll be honest, there isn't a food reviewer in the world that I go to, even though I'm sure there's some that are very good.
Yeah.
I'm not a guy who ever thinks, oh, that new restaurant is open. I'm eager to read that kind of formal review by a respected reviewer. I know this is going to be silly and ridiculous. I mean, that really gets to the heart of the show. I think Paul F. Tompkins said it best. I'm going to play what he said. And I think that can't be truer. This is literally the least important thing yet. There'll be those moments where, particularly if it's a chain that you love and they're getting to the review, you're so invested in, is it going to be 2 forks, 5 forks? Is it going to be in the Golden Plate Club? And this matters not at all to anyone. Even in the world of podcasting, this seems wildly unimportant, but it's both those things at the same time. It is the least important thing, and let's be honest, we all really care about food. Food 100%. Is a huge part of our lives socially, just chemically and physically. We need food. You talked about, again, that I don't have crazy bad eating habits, but as you know, I love food.
Yeah.
I'm eating all the time. I like all different kinds of food. I have to stop myself from eating too much.
You eat more than anybody else I've ever met.
Exactly. And this isn't because I'm trying to achieve a goal. It's because I really love food.
I think you're so angry that your fires burn so hot inside that you just melt all the food away and you just have to continually stoke those flames.
You don't think it's my love for my fellow man and my community?
No, John.
All right. Fine.
But
it might be.
I 100% agree with that. I remember the Cheesecake Factory episode. I was elated when they gave it 5 forks.
Spoiler alert.
Sure, Doug.
Thanks, Doug. And you're right.
It was a spoiler for Doug. He
was a spoiler for
hasn't
Doug.
listened to that episode.
Have you been to Cheesecake Factory?
I have not listened to that episode.
Well, no.
of the
Have you
podcast.
been to the Cheesecake Factory? I said
yes, with the encyclopedia.
Then you know how
menu.
good it is because that shit is great. I love Cheesecake Factory.
Can be a little heavy on the garlic.
Oh, such a specific.
Well,
how many garlicky foods?
Doug's flexing his muscles for his food review show.
That's true. Jonathan Gold's the only food critic I've ever really, really liked. R.I.P.
Okay. Oh, is this someone who's passed?
He died
I
of
recognize
cancer.
the name, but I don't.
He was
think
the L.A. Weekly and then L.A. Times.
Okay.
And he's a Pulitzer-winning, only Pulitzer-winning food critic in the world. and he wrote absolutely great reviews. And so check him out. Go to your local library.
Well, are you someone who is eager to read a review? If there's